If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us uncover more stories like this. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, the truth is out there, even in the darkest corners. Hello and welcome to Artificial Evidence, the daily podcast where we dive into mysteries that blur the lines between the seen and unseen, the known and unknown. I am your host, Owen Carver, and today we are traveling to a small mining town in Colorado in the early 20th century, a town that was, in every sense, a community built on secrets. This story unfolds in 1922, in Hollow Creek, a place defined by its coal mines, narrow mountain passes, and the kind of isolation that fosters both unity and mistrust. It is the tale of a missing man, a conspiracy buried beneath the earth, and a crime that left scars on a town that was already teetering on the edge. Twists, revelations, and unexplainable events ripple through this story like echoes in a darkened mineshaft. So get comfortable and let us begin. Hollow Creek was the kind of town where life revolved around a single industry. For over 40 years, its coal mines had been the lifeblood of the town, providing jobs and shaping the rugged character of its residents. In 1922, the population hovered just below 800. Families lived in clapboard houses perched on the hillsides, their windows glowing faintly through the ever-present coal dust that hung in the air. At the center of this small world was the Black Hollow mine, owned by a wealthy industrialist named Elijah Griswold. Griswold himself rarely visited Hollow Creek, preferring the comforts of Denver, but his presence was felt in every aspect of the town's operations. It was his nephew, Elijah Griswold, who oversaw the daily workings of the mine. Elijah was an ambitious man in his 30s, with a sharp mind for business and a colder reputation among the miners. The miners, meanwhile, were a tight-knit group, their bonds forged in the darkness of the earth. Among them were Elias Morton, a foreman who had worked in the mines for over 20 years. His younger brother, Samuel Morton, a recent widower with 2 young daughters, and Thomas Cray, a new arrival to Hollow Creek whose background was a mystery to everyone, but who had quickly gained a reputation as an outsider. With a sharp temper, the story begins on a cold morning in March. The snow from the previous week still blanketed the mountains, but spring was beginning to stir in the valleys. Elias Morton arrived at the mine at dawn, as he did every day, to oversee the first shift. By mid-morning, however, something unusual happened. One of the miners, William Harker, stumbled out of a side tunnel, pale and shaking. He claimed to have found something buried in the earth, a wooden crate, sealed shut, with strange markings burned into its surface. Elias dismissed it at first. Miners were always uncovering odd things in the depths of the mine, old tools, fossilized remains, even abandoned equipment from earlier excavations. But Harker's description of the markings caught his attention. Curious, Elias led a small group back to the tunnel. What they found was indeed peculiar. The crate was heavily damaged, its contents partially exposed. Inside were several leather-bound books, their pages brittle with age, and a tarnished metal object that none of them could identify. Elias ordered the crate removed from the mine, but the decision sparked an argument. Thomas Cray, the outsider, insisted they leave it where it was, claiming it was bad luck to disturb something so old. The tension grew when Elijah Griswold arrived on the scene. Unlike the miners, Elijah was fascinated by the discovery and ordered the contents of the crate sent to his office for further inspection. That evening, Elias Morton returned home with a growing sense of unease. His brother, Samuel, dismissed his concerns, reminding him that their family had worked the mines for generations and had seen their share of strange things. But Elias could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. His unease deepened the next morning when Elijah Griswold failed to show up at the mine. At first, the miners assumed Elijah had simply left town for a meeting, as he often did. But when his office was found ransacked and his car still parked at the edge of town, suspicion began to grow. Sheriff James Hollister, a no-nonsense lawman in his 50s, launched an investigation. What he discovered only deepened the mystery. Elijah's office was in chaos, with papers and ledgers scattered across the floor. The crate and its contents were gone, but a trail of muddy footprints led from the office to a side entrance that opened onto the woods. Nearby, deputies found a torn piece of fabric from Elijah's coat. For days, search parties combed the surrounding mountains, but there was no sign of Elijah Griswold. Rumors began to swirl. Some said he had been murdered by the miners, who resented his authority. Others whispered of an old curse tied to the land, claiming the crate had unleashed something dark and uncontrollable. The miners, for their part, grew increasingly paranoid, blaming one another for Elijah's disappearance. Then, on the 5th day of the search, a shocking discovery was made. Thomas Cray was found dead in the abandoned west shaft of the mine, his body crushed beneath a fallen beam. At first, it appeared to be a tragic accident, but Sheriff Hollister noticed something unusual. Thomas's hands were clutching a scrap of paper covered in symbols that matched the markings on the crate. The sheriff's investigation uncovered a hidden web of deceit. Elias Morton, it turned out, had been meeting with a rival mining company in secret, hoping to negotiate better pay for the workers. Elijah Griswold had discovered these meetings and threatened to fire Elias, prompting a heated argument just days before his disappearance. Meanwhile, Samuel Morton admitted to stealing the crate's contents from Elijah's office, believing the strange books might contain information about the mine's history. The pieces of the puzzle seemed to fall into place, but the biggest question remained unanswered. Where was Elijah Griswold? The answer came in the form of a letter, delivered to the sheriff's office 6 months after the investigation was closed. The letter, written in Elijah's handwriting, claimed he had left Hollow Creek voluntarily, fearing for his life after uncovering evidence of corruption within his own company. But many in the town refused to believe the letter was genuine. To this day, Elijah's fate remains a mystery, a ghost story whispered among the families of Hollow Creek. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows of Hollow Creek. This story reminds us that the past is never as buried as we think it is, and that every mystery has layers waiting to be uncovered. As always, I am Owen Carver, and this has been Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us uncover more stories like this. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, the truth is out there, even in the darkest corners.